Please let me out. Former Nxivm member testifies about being held in a room for 2 years. For 2 years, she said she was kept in a single room with blacked out windows. She had only one. The story of forced isolation came from a woman, identified by prosecutors only as Daniela, who testified last week in the trial against Keith Raniere, the founder of Nxivm, the Albany, New York-based company that sold pricey classes claiming to help people achieve success. Raniere faces federal charges of racketeering, sex trafficking, sexual exploitation of a child and human trafficking, among others. He has pleaded not. How she went from being a bright and promising high school student in Mexico with dreams of becoming a scientist to being pulled into the self-help curriculum of Nxivm, and eventually kept in isolation in a room for nearly 2 years at the direction of members of the cult-like group. Was. No, Daniela testified. Did. Daniela testified that Raniere and other Nxivm members convinced her own family that she had done something horrible enough to warrant being held in a room in isolation, and that they enlisted her family's help to keep her there. She went years with. How did she get there? Nearly a decade earlier, Daniela was one of the top students in Mexico. She had gained admission. Through the course of the lessons, Daniela testified, Nxivm members discouraged her from completing high school, and they encouraged her to help the group's mission and move to Albany, which she did that fall. She did not learn computer programming, as she was promised, but did work organizing Raniere's library and writing summaries of books for him. She also while a minor, Daniela testified, she was groomed for a sexual relationship by Raniere, who she said had sex with her days after her 18th birthday. By 2005, Daniela's entire family, her father and mother and 3 siblings, had followed in her footsteps to join the Nxivm community in Clifton Park, just outside Albany. Daniela said Daniela's parents were unaware that she was having a sexual relationship with Raniere, whom most Nxivm members believed to be celibate. If you had a relation, Daniela said, she later found out Raniere was also having sex with both her sisters. All 3 of the sisters. Daniela said she was disturbed knowing that Raniere was having a relationship with her sisters and many other women in the Nxivm community, and their relationship slowly began to unravel. It finally deteriorated. She said she and Raniere began to correspond by email only. He would incessantly. Daniela testified that Raniere and other Nxivm members enlisted the help of her own family to work. Her family didn't know that the basis of Daniela's ethical. She said she had to ask permission to sleep, eat, or go out. Daniela said she was determined to leave in 2009. She felt that she couldn't go to the authorities because she had been in the country without legal immigration status for several years by that point. She had last. In March 2009, Daniela said she had had enough. She emailed Raniere. According to Daniela's testimony, Raniere responded, Every waking hour of her life was focused on how to repair her so-called ethical breach, Daniela testified. She said her parents, but it was her once tight-knit family that made her change her mind, she testified. In a recorded conversation between Raniere and Daniela's mother, played in court, Raniere is heard telling Daniela's mother she needs to be more strict with her daughter, and mentions vaguely that Daniela has done something bad, saying what she had done was equivalent to having killed. In the recording, Raniere repeatedly compares what Daniela did to the killing of a child, and Daniela's sister is faintly overheard interpreting the conversation for her mother. It is unclear what Penza, the prosecutor, asked Daniela whether she had actually killed a child. No, Daniela testified. What? Daniela responded by testifying she had kissed another man. On March 9, 2010, Daniela entered the room, which was simply a bedroom in her family's home, where she would stay in isolation for an unspecified amount of time. Daniela, who remained unemotional throughout much of her testimony, began to cry as she described the years she spent in the room, alone, with nothing to do except write letters to Raniere. She would reread the it. Daniela said she was told that cutting her hair was another ethical. That for the entire time she was in the room, the only person she says she saw was Lauren Salzman, who would visit her occasionally for coaching to see whether she had fixed her ethical. Daniela said she asked to leave the room multiple times over the years, but it was only Raniere who could determine whether she had fixed her ethical. She said she was so starved for human interaction that she would lean against the wall of her room to try to listen to any noises that came through the air vents. She once snuck out. The time she spent in the room quickly took its toll on her psyche, and she testified that she began having suicidal thoughts. On the day she she said she immediately gained the strength to walk out of the house. Raniere's defense attorney Mark Agnifilo has argued that his sexual relationships with Nxivm followers were consensual. During Daniela's, Raniere's attorneys did not respond for a request for comment on the specific allegations Daniela made in her testimony. Building a new life. It was February 2012 when Daniela walked out of the room. She said she moved to what she determined through an internet search to be the safest. She found a temporary job, a place to live, and made contacts, and was able to get a copy of her birth certificate, a necessary piece of paper for her to be able to start a new life, get a bank account and a good job. Daniela said she stayed in touch with Nxivm members after she left, even continuing to do work for the group, because they still held her identification papers. But once she was she hadn't spoken to her family in years by that point, but she testified she has since reconciled and reconnected with some of them, including her brother and younger sister. As media coverage surrounding Nxivm grew in 2017, Daniela worked with her brother to get her younger sister out of the group and down to Mexico. But the sister event, Daniela's interactions with her older sister and her father continue to be limited, but she eventually forgave her mother for her role in keeping her in the room. CNN is
Raindrop, truck top, smoking, no cooking the hot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking